right. Hey, man, listen, I'm excited, y'all. I am in the city of Detroit, Michigan, and I guess the place Detroit, Michigan. And I'm super excited for the guests that I have here. And before we get started, I want to thank everybody who's joining. Of course, this is the Understanding a Man podcast, and we want to thank everybody who's joining. Please continue to like and share. You can follow us on any platform at Elam B. King. And, you know, Understanding a Man podcast, we tend to come from a male perspective in certain areas, and we're going to be doing that today. So I'm super excited for who I have in the room with me over here, and loving the studio right here. Shout out to Kelly Napper, who just put this thing together. She just super dope. If you need a publicist, that's who you need to holler at. All right, so thank you so much, Kelly, for just putting this together. But again, super excited for who I have with me today. I mean, I got So I got heavy hitters in here, y'all. So I'm excited, and so I'm gonna take a moment and introduce this first man right here. Let me tell y'all something. So you ever have an idea of what you're gonna do? You're gonna go do something, right? And then like you get there and it completely changes, right? That's what I'm thinking about when this young man that's right here to the right of me here. We had a chance to work together for an event about 2 years ago. What was it, the Kings? It's like it was a Kings retreat, and it was way up in the mountains, right? And I'm thinking I'm going there to be a speaker. Meanwhile, when I get there, this man right here, he speaks first, and I'm like, yeah, so my story's not that dope. So, you know, so I'm just a regular guy, right? And he spoke then, and he has a book, and I'll give him a chance to talk about that in a second. But I'm going to step out the way of greatness really quickly and just hop on over, because we're going to have some conversation about being faithful today, y'all. Because people be talking about it like it's just, you know, something that's just oh so easy for some people, and for some it is, and we can go off in east-west on the topic. But I want to hop on in real quick here and introduce, get out the way of greatness for a man that can come before us and just tell us who you are, how can people follow you, talk about your book really quickly, and then I got like one question for you. So this is Mr. Marvin Cotton.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm honored to be here, Elam. Like you said, we've worked together a few times, and I've done your show a few times, and it's always very dynamic. I think we all are regular guys that go through extraordinary things. Right. And I've been through some extraordinary things. I served 19 years, 7 months, 12 days in prison for a crime that I didn't commit. And I got exonerated about 32 months ago now. I wrote this book. It's a self-help book. I wrote it like an autobiography, but the book is written in a way that it can help anybody that reads it get through whatever tough time that they're going through.
So let's dial back. I see those of you who might follow the Understanding Man podcast. We have had Marvin Cotton on before when he was running for office.
Yeah, I was running for state representative here in Michigan.
And let me tell you something. This man will be there. It kind of, didn't end the way we wanted to last time, but it definitely will in the future, right? And so I don't want to slip past the fact that, because it has something to do with where we're going to go real quickly. How many years did you serve, sir?
19 years, 7 months, 12 days.
Good gracious. And you said you were exonerated, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So those that don't, he was let go because it wasn't really what he was supposed to get in there for, right? So let's just let that go. The man was supposed to be free and did 19 years. Let's be very clear with that, right? All right. So with that being said, I want to move to 19 years is a very long time.
Yes,
all right.
Definitely.
So let me tell you about Elam real quickly. Okay. Had I 19 years with all males, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so with all men during that time, 19 years, let me tell you what I would have done on day one coming out. Okay. It would have been a whole lot of everything dealing with the opposite sex. That's just me. I just know me, right? 19 years is a long time. The reason why that I have had the utmost respect for you from day one we met is because not only did you have an amazing story, but you talked about your queen. You talked about, the fidelity that you had with her, and then shifting forward to the super sexy. They had like the Martin Lawrence episode. proposal, right? And so just she's an amazing woman as well. But I'm gonna say this. This is just lock. Can we go into the locker room real quick? Okay. Just real quick. Okay. So, how did you maintain that level of discipline coming straight out all those years or whatever, sir? Because I know me enough to say I don't know whether I would have been able to do that, right?
See,
how did you do that?
The thing about going through extraordinary circumstances is you don't come out of that circumstance the way you walk into that circumstance.
Okay.
I didn't walk into prison disciplined. I didn't walk into prison faithfully.
Okay.
I didn't walk into prison the very best that I had to offer at that time. I walked in there, a young man, and I went through some things. God put some feet and some hands on me, some elbows and some knees on me in order to stretch my potential or stretch me into the fulfillment of my potential. Okay. So I walked out of prison a lot differently than I did when I walked in. And you can't make it through a circumstance like that, keep your mind intact, and then get out and do something differently after you've conquered what you've conquered. If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Okay.
So was it? So let me ask you a question. Just if people had to look at the how, because it sounds like that there was a training that existed during those 19 years.
A lot of people say, "How did you do it?"
Right.
My question is, how do you become?
Okay. Come on, sir. You want to go like 2 hours? We only got like 10 more minutes in the studio. Okay, so don't do that. But what I'm saying, is that, like,
if you can get through a circumstance like that,
right,
by being what you are at the beginning of the circumstance, then you ain't went through nothing.
Sir, come on.
See, so you have to become something different. You have to really grow into a new thing that you knew nothing of when you started. So you come out literally different.
Okay.
It's you. Because it was always there, but you didn't know, you didn't have access to it. And my brother Eddie is going to really talk about that.
I'm going to have to bring him in real quick. Because you tap it.
He's a master at access.
He like this. Oh my gosh, I want to get in that one. That's how
y'all keep going. Keep on keeping on.
I got to bring him in real quick. But
he's a master at talking about access. I've heard him speak about this many times. But you don't have access to certain jewels in yourself until you forced into the dirt to where you have to dig.
You want me to run around the building? Go ahead.
Hey, run.
Break that down, no, sir. Let's do this. If I wanted to ask to give an adaptable tool, of what specifically you used just to create that level of discipline.
Well, first you have to connect yourself to that which is more powerful than you. And that comes to the acknowledgement and the recognition that there's a God.
Okay.
That's number one. When you connect yourself to that source or to that power, it gives you something to strive for, even though you're not there.
Come on.
So you can't walk or you can't even talk about faith without attaching yourself to the ultimate faith. And then it gives you room or something to stretch towards. Because if you can do it on the onset, you don't know what you need to be to get through this circumstance that you ain't never been through before.
Okay.
So when you attach yourself to something that's more powerful than you, it gives you the faith that you need to stretch towards something that you can't even see, but you know is greater than you.
Come on.
And in that travel, you become better.
Okay. That's the run around the building moment right there for me, because that as you touch in that spirituality piece and just starting there, I want to take a moment and kind of shift, if you will, because that maybe we have to build that for some people, right? And so I want to introduce my next guest, and if you guys have been listening for the past 2 episodes, this gentleman has been here, and every time I said, listen, I like to call him like the Dolomite of like the coaching space, right? Because he drops these nuggets and it's just like boom, and it's like, oh gosh, it just explodes all over the place, right? So he's a 15-time author, and let me just say that the battle that he was able to walk through from a cancer perspective and being a survivor gives me the level of respect that he gets from me is on a whole nother level. And continuing to be out here every time I see him in these streets on social media just doing his thing, and he always is a sharp dude too. So I'm just like in a t-shirt today, you know what I'm saying? But these gentlemen, they just like, they're making me look bad.
You in Detroit.
But I want to bring on board, and let me get out the way of greatness, Dr. Eddie Connor. If you could just come on board really quickly, share with everybody who you are, and your book that you have coming out right now. You have a conference coming out that's going to just touch so many people, and I want to touch on something that Mr. Cotton just said, but let people know who you are.
Listen, if I'm Dolomite, y'all TNT and Dynamite. So
see what I'm saying? See how he started.
I'm with two titans of truth right here. So it's definitely an honor to build with you amazing brothers. As I said, as me and Marvin were at a session today, the fatherhood conference.
Right.
He got up there, ripped the stage, and I was able to pin it with the panel, talking about the whole aspect. A lot of times you can't get us brothers together unless we're talking about money, women, and sports.
Come on.
So to be talking about, relevant issues is needed and necessary. I'm a son of the city of Detroit, so we welcome you here or back here. Right. Hometown of Motown. And if, my story specifically is really all about the fact that service is the rent we pay for the space we occupy.
Okay.
Going through and really being a servant leader, and not just going through, but growing through. Marvin talks about him being locked up in prison, but a lot of times we're in a psychological prison.
Come on.
That eventually becomes physical for us. And so to have to actually break out of psychological pain, emotional incarceration,
right,
being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer as a kid.
Right.
My own biological father never visited me one day in the hospital, losing my hair, my self-confidence, my self-esteem, my will to live. As I say oftentimes, if we had to move the color purple on the screen, I tell you, just like Sophia, all my life.
Come on, see
I had to fight.
About those little sayings that he say, right? Okay, go ahead.
You know what I'm saying? And so to fight through the storm and the rain and find that your test is testimony, your misery becomes ministry, your mess is a message, your stumbling block is a stepping stone. God used your setback as a setup for your greatest comeback. We all got a story that he'll use your tragedy as strategy to move your life to the next level. And so to bounce back from a setback, to find the can in cancer, to now develop a mentorship program for many of our young brothers called Boys to Books, to write books now, to be looking to develop this conference, which is in the throes of everything coming out Saturday, August the 5th. And just really to empower people to overcome obstacles.
Come on.
Is really my true calling, and really empowering people to access their identity, their impact, and their influence, and their purpose.
August 6th, I'm super excited to be on board. August 5th, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I got 5
5th.
on it.
All right. Hey, and that space that you were talking about, and I want to look at when you were talking about with young men and empowering them.
Yeah.
And so looking at your book that you have right now, and if we had to think about if getting to the space of where Marvin is, of this higher level of clarity, discipline, and things of that nature, can you give me the walk from a young man through to this space? And I'm just saying a tip, a tool that someone could use to go from there to where he is right now.
Yeah, let me make sure I'm getting the question right. Rephrase that again.
So what I'm basically want to know is that, okay, so where Marvin is today of having a higher level of discipline, all right? Yeah. So I know that everybody knows about a Proverbs woman.
Yeah, right.
But they don't know about the Proverbs man.
Yeah, for sure.
And so you speak so heavily about that within your book. And so if you had to give a tool that gives men the transition of moving from one space to the other, of having that higher level of discipline, what would you speak about?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're hitting the nail right on the head with the hammer. And that's why I wrote this book, Who Can Find a Faithful Man, because we prognosticate and talk about Proverbs chapter 31, verse 10, who can find a virtuous woman, as preached from every hill to every molehill, and every city and valley around the country, much less the world. But we don't talk about Proverbs chapter 20, verse 6, which asks the question, who can find a faithful man?
Right.
And so it seems as if oftentimes, especially in relationships, we're preparing men we're preparing women for unprepared men. Simply because there's always a conference, there's always a seminar, there's always a session about what it takes for a woman to become a wife, but not what it takes for a man to be a husband, much less faithful. And so I think it is the question, can you be faithful in your calling? Can you be faithful in your commitment? Can you be faithful to Christ? If you can't do any of that, you won't be able to be faithful to your woman or your wife, much less the family that's in your life. And so the whole aspect, I think we have to get to the place to where we learn how to create healthy boundaries for ourselves. Saying no is oftentimes saying yes to our purpose.
Now, in all fairness to my brother Eddie, my discipline was built in a very unnatural environment. I spoke today at the conference with my brother, Dr. Eddie Connor, and I talked about how I was reborn in a steel and concrete environment. So my discipline was drawn from the very culture of the environment that I was in.
Right.
So the man that I am now today and the level of discipline that I have was because in prison, you can't make mistakes.
Right. Okay.
Because a mistake can cost someone their life.
Right. And so taking that same level of discipline when you came out, right? Because I'm telling you, most people would have wilded out, right? And you kept that. So it would almost sound like, this is what I almost heard, all right? You let me know if I'm wrong, that you were put in a situation where your discipline had to happen.
Oh yeah,
and
that's the case for all growth,
right?
All growth comes because it has to happen in that moment. If it's a lower degree or a higher degree,
okay,
it has to happen in that moment.
Okay.
So I had to become more disciplined. I had to grow. I had to become more intelligent. I had to grow in emotional intelligence. I had to.
So, Dr. Connor, how do I continue that? If I, for a moment, had to go with a listener right now that might not have that level of spirituality that's existing right now, that you might be speaking about, give me a tool beyond our spirituality that allows me to keep that discipline going.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing is that we have to tap into the trauma and the triggers of what it is that we have experienced, because it does become TNT type of moments.
Right.
Because who it is that we are will fester, will show up in our relationships when we connect with other people. If we have not dealt with the fears, the father wounds, the failures, the frustrations of what it is that we have experienced and gone through as men. Dr. Joy DeGroy talks about in her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, that we carry in our DNA the trauma of what it is that we have experienced that has been transferred and passed down from generation to generation. And a lot of times we're dealing with unaddressed trauma, unaddressed hurt, and we're angry and don't even know why, because we have not necessarily investigated it and taken off the mask to heal from our past. How can you heal if you won't deal with the issue? How can you address what you won't confess? How can you fight what you refuse to face? And until we do that, hey, we'll never really build tremendously transparent and transformative relationships with our brothers and our sisters.
Yeah, this is part 1 to a 3-part show.
Yeah. Well, and see, I was going to try. Honestly, we're gonna take a break and come back for a part 2. We're gonna have to, because something that you're tapping now into the emotions of men, and some of the things that they deal with, and in the spirit of fatherhood. And Father's Day being around the corner, this is a tough time for some, and those that have had a father in their life, those that might not have had a father in their life, because you might have had a father in your life and have some challenges. You might have not had a father in your life and had some challenges, but there is an emotional intelligence that men are beginning to peek their eye and open up a little bit more of now, but we have spaces that have not been dealt with, as you were speaking with earlier. And so that not only can trickle into your relationship, but I think if we back that down, that first relationship with yourself and your father, I think that's important. And so we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we do that, you have a conference coming up, Eddie. You have a book that you just dropped. And also, I'm going to call him the future Mr. Dr. Cotton, you know what I'm saying, as well. If you guys could just share with everybody your books, and then we'll just move on to part 2.
Absolutely. Who Can Find a Faithful Man is available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Audible, wherever books are sold. Is really about finding faithfulness to live, lead, and love with vulnerability. live, lead, and love with even loyalty. And so that's in conjunction with the conference that's taking place Saturday, August the 5th in the city of Detroit at Focus Hope Conference Center. It's called the Access Identity Conference. It's all about ideas, impact, influence, connecting kingdom and community, merging ministry in the marketplace, empowering people to access who it is that they are and their identity. So the keys to self-discovery, to walk in your uniqueness and your greatness. And we're bringing so many great speakers and individuals coming to speak. We've heard of actor Hill Harper. He's coming. We got Dr. Rose Moten, Dr. Sabrina Jackson. I go down and down the line. Tasha Page Lockhart. And they're giving strategy, structure, solutions on how to take your vision to the next dimension. Go right now, accessidentity.org, and I'm giving you a steal of a deal. I'm hooking you up. When you put in the word access at checkout, you get $50 off. accessidentity.org. Go there now.
Hey, listen, that's like the second time y'all got the hookup, right? Just for listening to the Understanding Men.
I got the hookup. Holler if you hear
me. A future Dr. Cotton. Let them know who you are, sir.
My book, you can find my book on Amazon. It is an Amazon bestseller. It's Better Not Broken. It's a story about how I made it through the time. People always ask the question, how did you do 20 years for something you didn't do? Ooh. It would have drove me crazy. I wouldn't have been able to do it. I couldn't do it. I can't see it. Well, I'm explaining and talking about exactly what I went through and how I got through it. Right. I'm putting the tools in there. It's a self-help book, but the stories is in there. The things that I went through while I was in prison there. I'm taking you right into my mind, walking you through step one of when I was arrested and all the way until I walked out of the door. So, and I'm giving you the tools throughout the book on how to apply it to your own life.
Hey, listen, I told y'all that I had like some big time people on today. So, I mean, I want to take a moment to say thank you so much, future Dr. Marvin Cotton and Dr. Eddie Connor for just coming on today. Thank you guys so much. This is the Understanding Man podcast. And I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. Hey, we're about to go into part 2 in a moment and just kind of talk about fatherhood. And we have Father's Day right around the corner. So a couple of things we're going to talk about there. So please continue to stay tuned in. You can join us on all platforms at Elam B. King. And of course, you can always go over to elambking.com to find out any information that's going on that Understanding a Man is doing. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate y'all, gentlemen. And we're going to roll on in. We're going to do that in a second.
Big facts.
Do I have time to go change?